You ever get that feeling, that little alarm bell going off in your gut that just tells you something isn't right, that what you're hearing isn't the whole truth? We've all been there. But figuring out if someone's just making a mistake or telling a deliberate lie, well, that can be really, really tough. So we're going to get into it and break down some of the key behavioral giveaways that science points to.
Okay, so here's the first big idea, and it's a real game changer. We get so caught up trying to poke holes in the story itself, right? Analyzing every single word. But the real clues, they're not in what is being said, they're in how it's being said. It's those nonverbal signals, those little involuntary reactions that end up telling the real story.
So, what exactly are we looking for? We're going to break this down into two main parts. First up, we'll cover the passive tells, the stuff you can spot just by watching and listening carefully. And then we'll dive into some active tests you can use to, apply a little strategic pressure.
All right, for this first section, think of yourself as a detective of human behavior. This is all about sharpening your observation skills. You're looking for those tiny, almost invisible signs that a mind is working overtime trying to craft a deception.
This right here is all about something called cognitive load, which is really just a fancy way of saying how hard your brain has to work. See, when you tell the truth, you're just pulling from memory. It's fast. But a lie? Oh, a lie has to be built from scratch. The brain has to invent the details, check them for consistency, and manage the stress of it all. That extra work, it creates a very noticeable pause. So a liar's brain is under a ton of stress. And what happens is it often overcompensates. They might just bury you in a mountain of details you didn't even ask for, trying to sound more convincing. You might also notice their speech suddenly speed up or slow way down as they struggle to stick to their script. And look at their body, the body always wants to tell the truth. They might hide their hands, or their movements might become really stiff and restricted.
Oh, this one is a classic. It's called emotional mismatch. Basically, their words are telling you one story, but their face or their body is telling a completely different one. Imagine someone telling you a heartbreaking story, but for just a split second, you catch a tiny smirk, a flicker of pleasure. Or they say they're furious, but their body language is completely relaxed. When the words and the body don't line up, trust the body.
Now, this is such a simple switch, but it is so, so powerful. It's pretty easy to make up a fake timeline of events. First, this happened, then that happened. But faking the real, genuine emotions that go along with those events, that is incredibly difficult. Asking how did you feel throws a liar completely off their rehearsed script and into territory they're just not prepared for. All right, so we've covered the watching and listening part. Now let's get a little more proactive. We're shifting gears from just passive observation to some active tests. These techniques are designed to strategically increase that cognitive load we talked about, making it even harder for someone to keep a fake story straight.
This is a brilliant tactic, and it's actually used by law enforcement investigators. Think about it. A liar has practiced their story forwards, right? A happens, then B, then C. It's a script. But the second you ask them to tell it backwards, C, then B, then A, that whole script just shatters. A true story is based on real memories, so you can tell it in any order. A lie, it's like a house of cards, and this question is what knocks it over. You can think of a lie as being kind of like a movie set. The front of the building looks perfect, but if you walk around back, there's nothing there. Liars are totally prepared for the obvious questions, but they are not prepared for the weird, unexpected ones. Questions like, what was the weather like that day? Or what color was the carpet? These questions force them off their pre-built set into territory where they have to improvise on the spot, and that is usually where they mess up. Here's a simple truth about, the truth. It doesn't change. It's anchored in memory. If you ask a truthful person the same question an hour later, you're going to get the same basic answer. But a lie isn't anchored in real memory. It's just a fabrication. So when you ask a liar to repeat a specific detail later on, they have to remember what they said, not what actually happened. And keeping that fabrication consistent is really, really hard. So, after all these techniques, all these clever little tests, what is the single most powerful tool you have? What's the most revealing question you can possibly ask someone you think is lying to you? Well, the answer might surprise you. That's right. The most powerful thing to do is say nothing at all. After they give you an answer, especially one you're a bit suspicious of, just hold their gaze and let the silence hang there for a few extra seconds. For a liar, that silence is absolutely deafening. They'll feel this overwhelming need to fill it, to keep talking.
And that's when they'll start rambling, adding details, correcting themselves, and ultimately talking themselves right into a corner. So, if you put all of this together, what's the big idea? What's the main takeaway? It's that you don't catch a liar by turning into some aggressive interrogator. You catch them by being a really good observer and, well, letting them reveal themselves. And that really brings us right back to where we started. The best liars, they're ready for a fight. They're prepared for you to push back and argue. What they are not prepared for is a calm, patient observer who knows exactly what to look for. Your real power isn't in pointing a finger, it's in paying attention. Now, the goal here isn't to make you suspicious of everyone. Not at all. It's about making you a better, more perceptive person to talk to. So the real question to leave you with is this. Now that you know what to look for, now that you know the signs, what are you going to notice?